This episode of the Better To podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and Needom, author of the Better To Burnout series, which includes her latest releases of Fairy Tales and I Love You and Is Love Just Another High. Hi, and welcome to the Better To podcast with Needom. I'm your host, Donna. Today I have the pleasure of talking to Australian country singer Chloe Styler. Chloe has a term called Yeehaw Pop. That's what her music is categorized as. And it's a little bit like Lisa Loeb and Jewel to me, but I think you should check her out. And I think you should stick around and check out our podcast as well, because we talk about all sorts of things musically. You might have heard my voice hosting the Better To podcast, but did you know I'm also the mastermind behind the Better To Burnout book series? The stories unravel the lives of Nigel Hartigan, the groovy bassist of Sambuca Fedora, the stunning singer-model Ava Richards, and the suave record executive singer Russell Langford. Love, romance, and drama run rampant as their lives tangle up. But brace yourself, folks, because not every tale has a happy ending. Snag your copy today from most online booksellers. Hi, Chloe. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I am fantastic. So are you in Australia currently, or are you in Nashville?
I am in Australia. I was in Nashville not too long ago, but I recently flew home and have been settling back into Aussie life.
Okay. So I take it that means that there's no concert dates coming up in the US then?
No, not at the moment, but I have just booked another trip to come back. I suppose I'm kind of splitting my time between the two places at the moment. So I will be back later this year for some writing and some finalizing of some recording that I did in my latest trip.
Because I knew that you were over here working on some tracks, and you're going to be releasing more singles as time progresses, and I'm sure you have more singles that you're going to be releasing. That's what you're going back to do, is work on some more music.
Yes, absolutely. So I was recently in Nashville in June, and I recorded 4 songs, so an EP, and excuse my voice this whole episode as well. I'm like fighting some kind of flu, which it's winter in Australia, so there's just all those yucky bugs going around. But in June I recorded an EP. So we got my vocals done, but we need to just finalize a few things before it comes out next year. So I will be back later this year to finish that all off.
Nice. Now you actually had a meeting with Luke Wooten back when you were 15 years old.
Yeah. So my producer Luke Wooten and I actually met. It was a bit more informal than a meeting, I suppose. When I was 15, I visited Nashville with my parents for the very first time, and my dad had a friend that lived in Nashville who knew Luke and just connected us just as basically as somebody to know in town while we were there for a couple of days, that maybe grab dinner with him or something. And the next thing I know, we're going to the studio at Station West on West Iris Drive in Berry Hill, and that's where I ended up recording 11 years later. So it's a really lovely full circle moment and experience for me, and I'm just so grateful to have Luke in my corner and on my team, because he's just an incredible producer, and I feel very, very fortunate to bring my songs to life with him.
And that had to be pretty amazing, like you're saying, full circle, because when you have that moment where your position has changed, the dynamic of the relationship has changed, because being a 15-year-old girl, you understood a little bit of the no? When you stepped into that studio, did you not think anything? I mean...
Yeah, I mean, when I was 15, we recorded some covers, and then they're on like burnt onto a disc, a CD in my house, and I could pull them out if I really went looking for them. But I guess at that age, it was all just like a huge dream, and like a bit more unattainable than I suppose it is now, as I'm essentially like doing the thing, and I'm playing music in another country, and I'm doing all those fun things that I could only truly dream about at 15. So it's really cool to look back on those times and that first meeting with Luke. And I also think 15-year-old me would be so she would lose her mind if she knew that like this was my 3rd trip to Nashville in 12 months, like just gone, and I'm working with Luke in a producer artist capacity, and it's just It's really cool. Life is cool sometimes.
So when did you discover that you wanted to be a singer?
I was pretty young when my parents put me into singing lessons. I was about 7, and then they put me into the choirs and the musical theatre productions at my school. And from that young age, I just loved it, and I loved being dramatic and singing and all of those things that go along with being creative. And my parents I love them dearly, and they really nurtured that in me and taught me that there's no such thing as can't. So if I want to be anything I want to be in the world, I can. So I obviously chose a very difficult career and a very popular career choice for a lot of people, and it's a hard one to break through. But when I left high school, I did actually go to college, and I studied a Bachelor of Business Management and a Bachelor of Journalism. But my heart was always pulling me back to music, and so I recorded an EP when I was 20, and that was like the first taste of actually doing music as a career or as a more than just a hobby. And I just loved it. And then I immersed myself in the Australian country music industry, and I did what we call the Tamworth Academy of Country Music here, which is just like a couple of weeks where you learn about songwriting and industry connections and networking and like live stage presence and performance tips and tricks and things that I had never ever considered. And so I suppose it was like my early 20s where I was like, okay, this is definitely what I want to do. But it was something that I've known since I was 7 when I first started singing, that I've always loved it.
Well, and when you were talking about going to college, taking a business management course is one of the best things you could do, because you don't want somebody else to, dare I say, have access to everything that you do and make your decisions for you. And while it's nice to just sit there and say, okay, I'm a singer and I don't have to do this, you want to be able to know what people are talking about.
Definitely. And I'm very grateful for those few years at college and having the business management degree. I majored in marketing, so that does come in handy when I'm doing all my cover arts and my music videos. And I do it all myself. I'm self-managed and independent, and I make all the decisions, which can be overwhelming at times. But I do think having that business degree that I can draw upon, and also the journalism degree, comes in handy as well for interviews and for I can read it and write up a press release if I need. And my bio, I've never had to get anybody else to write a bio. Like, I just kind of do it all myself, which saves money in the long run, but also adds stress onto my plate, because I probably could just delegate that. But I'm a control freak, so what can I say?
but I mean, the fact is, it's kind of like, did you set yourself up when you were thinking about college? Okay, if I take the business course and I take the journalism course, then this is going to actually help me with the singing, because then I can market myself, and then I can manage myself, and I don't have to pay these other people.
I think the really smart answer would be, yeah, I knew what I was doing, but I did not. No, I didn't know what I was doing. I graduated high school, and my school was very academic, and it was kind of a sense of, okay, well, this is where you go next. You go to college or university. And that's what I did. I went to college for 5 years, and I actually started out in a music degree. I was studying creative industries and majoring in music, but I didn't really feel like I needed to study it to do it. So that's when then that thought process came in, and I was like, okay, well, if I don't need to study music, what can I study to help with my music? And that's where the business management, and then the journalism was just really rogue, and it was because I really like English and linguistics and those kinds of things. So I just really enjoyed I really enjoyed those studies, but I definitely don't use them.
But it's something to fall back on, that if you, like you said, when you're doing an interview, you can handle yourself in an interview. There's not going to be this moment of, well, what do I say now? You can know something to say, even if it's just something polite or trite or whatever. You know how to pull it off.
Yeah. And I suppose with journalism as well, you know, that's looking for a story and writing a story or a piece on somebody or something. And that comes in handy when I'm writing a song, because sometimes I'm drawing upon other people's stories and lived experiences that I might not have experienced yet. And at least I kind of have the tools inside here somewhere, buried back there somewhere, of how to really draw upon people's stories and experiences and draw it out of them and write a song.
So I want to go back to the 15-year-old girl. When I think about, I'm looking at you with the two showcases, the CMA Fest, two Sound Australia showcases in Nashville, including your debut in the Bluebird Cafe. I mean, there's
Yeah.
people that are still longing to do that, that have been producing music and putting music out for a while, but they still have not been able to do that. So what was it like?
It was amazing. It was so pinch me. I just remember walking in. It was my second time in there as like forever. Because I'd only been in once before to see my friend Phil Barton play on a trip earlier that year. It was last year that this happened, and I walked in and it was still like all shiny and new, and I was just overwhelmed by the fact that I was in the Bluebird. And then they were like, "Okay, time to get on stage," and then that was overwhelming. But it was overwhelming in like the best sense. I was nervous, but I really channeled that into excitement and just trying to soak it all up because it's so cool and there's so much history in those walls and the crowd are phenomenal. The people that go and watch a Bluebird Cafe performance know how to be an audience and they sit and they listen and they respect your stories and they really, I suppose, let you have your moment. And I really felt like we all had our moment. There were four of us on stage and we all got a moment in that round to show who we really are and also soak it all up because it might not happen again. Who knows? But at least I can say I've done it, and it was incredible.
Well, and it's such an intimate venue. I
Yeah, it
mean,
was like 60 people there or something. It's quite intimate, and those are rooms that I'm used to playing back home in Australia. When I put shows on, I perform to those size rooms because in my area we don't have we have really large venues or we have really small venues. There's not a lot of in between size venues. So I'm used to the intimate kind of size. So it was quite nice to be at the Bluebird where I was like, oh, I played to this like a month ago at home, but it's just entirely different and on an complete other scale.
I can imagine. And so like when you opened up for Tony Hadley from Spandau and Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins, was this an arena show or was this another small venue?
They were theaters.
Okay.
So the Tony Hadley tour was back in 2020, and I did 5 dates with him around the country. We performed at, yeah, theatres. So in my state, it was the Tivoli Theatre. In New South Wales, it was the Enmore Theatre, and so on and so on. And they were rooms of about between 1,200 and 2,200, which was amazing. And they were pretty big rooms for me at the time. I was very, very, very nervous for those shows. But by the time Tom Bailey, Thompson Twins tour came around 2 years later, they were very similar size rooms. There were even a couple of overlaps of the same venues. And I felt a lot more confident. I'd also just grown up a little bit. Like I was
Yeah.
2 years older and I'd had a lot more experience under my belt. So I wasn't as nervous for, I mean, I was still nervous. Don't ever get me wrong. I still get nervous, but I kind of knew what I was walking into. But I suppose with the Tony Hadley shows, like I didn't know what I was walking out on, like into
Right.
and what the audience was going to be like. So, I do love a theater. I love performing on theater stages. Maybe that's the musical theater nerd in me coming out because I'm used to that from being a kid in all the productions at school. But uh, I do love a theater and the history behind those.
Well, that's the one thing about theaters. Like you said, there is such history. There's a theater in New Orleans where I grew up called the Sanger. And when the lights go down and the house lights go down, they painted the ceiling to have stars on it. So you see little
Oh,
starlight. It's beautiful.
yeah,
And
beautiful.
I mean, they redid the theater from when I was a kid. So because it was shuttered for a long time, but to see a theater be brought back to life and in its prime once again is an amazing thing. And there, like you said, there's such history in them.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And as the performer on stage, I love it. I mean, I haven't played arenas, so I can't say I prefer it over arenas, but it's nice to look at it and see the history as well. Like there's a theatre in Brisbane, not far from me, called the Princess Theatre, and it's recently been renovated and brought back to its historical beauty. And standing on that stage looking out, you can see the the historical architecture and stuff from stage. So it's really beautiful.
Well, and that's the one thing when you look at when you're talking about you've not played arenas, you still, even in a theater show, you still have an intimacy with it. It's not the
Yeah.
Bluebird, but there's
No, it's not
still
the Bluebird.
but there's still that intimacy because you can still see most of your audience. You're not totally looking out and just seeing this whole chasm of people that, a sea of people that, that's going to be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I could only imagine. I've played big crowds at festivals. So I played a festival a few years ago called Big Red Bash, and there was about 7,000 people there, and that is overwhelming. So imagining that in a arena with in an enclosed space, that's just a lot. I'm imagining would be a lot on the brain to take in.
Oh yeah. I mean, nobody really thinks about when you go out on stage that you have to you have to turn yourself, you have to flip a switch, you have to put yourself in overdrive, because if you don't, your performance is not going to have that oomph that's going to connect with people. I don't care, and
Yeah.
I know you know that, and no matter how bad your day is, you still have to perform.
Yeah, definitely. And there's been times that I've had to do that. And I suppose the bigger stages you get onto and like the further along in your career you get, those days probably are more often than not because you're touring so much. But sometimes it is hard to get up on stage when you've had a bad day and really give it your all. But the way I look at it is it's there's people out there that deserve a great show and you got to give it to them no matter how you're feeling on the inside. So I just try and do my best.
That's all you can do. That's
Yeah.
all you can do. I mean, there was a when I first started doing the podcast, I had booked an interview that I really wanted to do on the date of my husband's passing, the first anniversary.
Mm,
And I did it partially because it's like I need the distraction. But when I was on camera, you can't tell. You see
no.
smiling, laughing. It's a great time. And I got off camera and I cried. And so it's
Yeah.
like, I think because in a way you have to perform even doing this. So it's like, as a performer, you have to put on that mask, which comes back to your theater background, to do what you need to do to show people a good time so they can be entertained. And it takes a lot of courage and strength, and especially to get up in front of a live audience. This is intimate. This is not a big deal, but getting up in front of 1,500 people, that's a bigger deal. A lot bigger.
Yeah. And if I overthink it too much, I let it get in my head and I really I think I kind of tank the performance. But if I just remember why I'm doing it, because I love writing songs and then I love playing those songs to people and connecting with people through those songs. And I love being on stage and singing them. Like it's just so much fun to me. And if I remember that, I think I do okay. But if I get all up in my head about it and I'm like psyching myself out, well, where's the fun gone? Like, why am I doing that? It's still got to be fun, you know?
Right.
So that's something I'm trying to do more of these days than previous years and performances.
What's the best show that you've ever played, do you think, in your mind? I mean, out of all the venues you've played, all the shows you've played, what is your favorite show?
Do you mean my best
Yeah.
performance as a performer?
No, meaning if you could go back in time to the one place you could play again, to that moment, what would that
Yeah.
be?
Oh, it's probably so cliche, but CMA Fest, that was amazing and it was a dream come true. And I remember saying to my dad flew over to Nashville with me last year for CMA Fest because I'd only ever been when I was 15 and I hadn't been back. And yes, I was in my mid 20s. I probably could have gone by myself, but I was really nervous. And
Right.
also I wanted my family with me and my mum couldn't come, so dad came with me. And I just the day before I did the CMA Fest performance, I just remember saying to my dad, you know, if nothing else happens in this career, like I'm happy because all I've ever dreamt about doing is performing in Nashville. And I got to do that with CMA Fest. And uh, yeah, I will never take that for granted. And I will never forget that experience. And if the day comes that I'm playing a stadium show, that's so cool. But like, I just,
Right.
that is just the most amazing experience for me getting an opportunity to perform in another country and sing my songs in another country, halfway across the world. Like that's just that's just crazy. So if I could relive that again, I would.
Well, and you have quite the reputation. I mean, you've had success in your homeland, correct?
Yeah, I suppose. And that is those little building blocks over the last few years of having the success here is definitely what got me to where I was performing in Nashville and having that opportunity. So it's cool to see that growth over the years as a performer and as an artist and a writer and getting the recognition as well. That's really nice as independent and self-managed because it can be lonely and I definitely cry to my parents about it a lot more than I probably need to. But it's yeah, it's moments like performing at CMA Fest or getting my Bluebird Café debut. Even like in my latest trip, I got to perform and make my debut at the Listening Room Cafe in Nashville, which to me was a really big achievement because I've seen so many writers' rounds there and artists that I really admire performing their songs or songs they've written for other people at that venue. And that was a huge bucket list moment for me as well as an artist trying to do the Nashville thing as well. So there's just really cool things happening at the moment. And I think I've just long-winded answered your question
Oh,
that I
it's
would
fine.
probably just relive everything.
You're fine.
I would do everything again.
Well, that's the thing. When somebody poses a question like that, you're like, okay, I got the moment in my head, but wait, there's more.
Yeah. But wait,
So,
all of them.
yeah,
And
exactly.
even the bad ones, like even the performances where I feel like I didn't do my best or a show that might not have been the best opportunity for me, I would still relive them because they all still got me to here.
Exactly.
So,
And
yeah.
that's the thing we sometimes lose track of. Even the worst things in our life led us to where we are and gave us the knowledge
Yeah.
of who we are. So I want to talk a little bit about your music. I when I was listening to your tracks, you reminded me a little of Jewel and Lisa Loeb, which I know doesn't
Ah,
necessarily fit into the country dynamic, but
the Jewel is bang on. I used to listen to so much Jewel growing up.
well, then it fits. And
Yeah.
when we're looking, I was listening to I believe 25, and talking about faith right now, all will work out in the insecurities. So where does honestly, do you have a lot of insecurities, or do you just kind of do you ever have imposter syndrome?
Oh, that's an interesting topic because I didn't really know what it was and I didn't really think I had it. And then as I've gotten a little bit more success, I don't like that word either because I feel like it's all just relative to where you are in your career and what you've achieved so far. But as I've gotten further along with what I'm doing and released more songs and had cool opportunities come my way, um, I've just had a few people be like, "Oh wow, you're doing so well," and blah blah blah, and I'm like, "Am I?" Like, I don't even realize that if 3 years ago me knew what we were doing now, like that person wouldn't believe it. So I think I have a little bit of imposter syndrome in that sense where like, yeah, I got to play CMA Fest and make my Bluebird Cafe debut and but it doesn't feel like it feels like I've done it, but it almost doesn't feel like I've done it, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Like it's really hard. So I have actually felt that in the last year or so, just with like lovely friends being like, "Well, you are doing really well." And it's like, am I actually? Because I cry a lot, and I'm not sure if I'm achieving what I want to achieve, but everything does happen when it's meant to happen and happens for a reason. Blah blah blah. So, yeah, I think that hopefully answers your question a little bit. But in regards to insecurities, yeah, all the time. Like I'm always second guessing what I'm doing, always wondering if I'm making the right choices with what song comes out next or what I'm wearing in a music video or what the cover art looks like. Like I drive myself to the level of insanity that is unreasonable. Like it's so unreasonable for just a cover artwork. It's just ridiculous. But I'll do it and I'll do it to make sure that I can live with myself when the song comes out. So those insecurities creep in all the time, like the self-doubt, comparison always creeps in whenever I see someone doing really cool things and achieving amazing things over here in Australia. I'm like, why is that not me? Or why have I not had that opportunity yet? Um, and then that's when the whole trusting in the process comes in. So with 25, it was a big ordeal of just learning to trust in whatever you trust in and letting it do its thing and knowing that something's got your back and everything will work out when it's meant to and how it's meant to. But it is so easy to fall into the trap of being like, oh, but but what about me? Or why is it not happening for me? And yeah, and just doing that cycle. But I'm a lot more better, a lot more better. That's terrible English. Journalism degree not coming in handy there. I'm a lot better than I was when I wrote 25, and I'm learning to just let go of things that are bad for me and accept and appreciate what's good and what I have at the moment.
I think, the comparison thing, I'm an author too. So the comparison thing is a major thing that I get because you sit there and you go, well, my book's good. Why isn't anybody, what can I do? I don't want to spam the world with my book, but what do I do? And so then you start having doubts and you start saying, well, do I want to give up? Because there's how many other people doing the same thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's huge, especially when I visit Nashville because it's just so obvious how many people are trying to do it and wanting to achieve the same things as each other. So that you can either get like paralyzed with overwhelming thoughts of I'm never going to be good enough, or you just use it as an opportunity to be like, well, how cool. How cool that we all have the same dream and we're all so talented and we can all write great songs and just trust that if it's meant for you, it will happen. It's so philosophical and kind of silly at times. But if I don't think like that, I'm just like, it's a mess up here in my brain.
I understand. I mean, and for me, it's like, okay, as long as I'm writing and I'm enjoying what I write, that's all that really matters, isn't it? I mean, yeah, sure, I want other people to read it, or you want other people to hear you sing, but at the end of the day, if you're getting satisfaction from what you're doing and creating as a creator, then that really matters. It's not the likes, it's not the clicks, it's not the reviews. It's what fills your heart.
Exactly. And I'm at that place now where I'm making music because I love it and I'm releasing it because I want to, and I'm releasing when I want to and what I want to, and it feels great because I feel like I'm filling my cup, and hopefully that's translating through to the audience and people that are finding my music, because I really feel like me now in my music, and I really feel like I'm just having fun with it now. And that's what it should be. It should be fun, and I should be doing it because I want to get the songs out and I want to write these songs, blah, blah, blah. And not trying to do it for external validation. That's where it would be. That's where the tipping point would push you over into, are you doing this for the right reason,
Well, then there's the other avenue of people not realizing that whether you're an author or a singer or whatever, that this is actually a business. You have to treat it like a business. And that's, yes, the easy part is singing the song, laying down those tracks, or writing the book. It's everything else that comes with it. That's the work.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work. Always a lot of work. But I do have great publicists, and my sister takes my photos and films my music videos for me these days. And I have a great graphic designer. So I'm building a lovely team around me, and I will continue to do so that I start taking some load off of my own brain. But until then, I will just keep at it,
Mm-hmm. So read a room. It was based on being ghosted.
It was. Unfortunately, I got ghosted last year. So if you don't, do you know what ghosting is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay, great. Because some people don't, but basically I was loosely seeing this guy last year, and I can admit it was very new, but I also just think that common decency and respect is something that most people should have. Um, yeah, we'd been on a few dates, and then I flew to Nashville and I performed at CMA Fest, and I could tell I was being ghosted. And the one thing I kept telling all my friends was, oh my goodness, this guy is so lucky that I know how to read a room and I can tell that he's not into me. So he can get away with not sending the text because I have self-awareness and I can tell, and then I went into my writing session with Lauren McLam and Phil Barton. It was actually my first ever Nashville co-write. And I word vomited as I do. And I'm friends with Phil prior to this session. So I was just like really getting at it and getting angry as well. And Lauren, bless her heart, was just sitting there with the guitar. And about 45 minutes later, she goes, okay, so what about this? And then she just starts singing what is now the first verse. And I was like, oh my God, like that's my whole word vomit in concise sentences turned into a song. It was amazing. So I really, really love this song. I'm really proud of it. I think it's really, really cool that we were able to turn something that was quite hard. Like, it's not fun to be ghosted. It's just like, just send the text. Just send the text. Say, hey, not interested. Nice to know you. Have a great life. Literally anything.
Yeah. But here's the thing. People don't do that anymore. I mean, even because I sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace as I'm decluttering my home. And they're like, okay, I'm going to come get it on such and such. Okay.
And then they don't show up.
No. And I've gotten to the point, it's like, well, where are we going to meet? When you text me with that you're on your way, then I'll give you the information. Otherwise, I'm not wasting my time.
Exactly. Yeah. It's sleeping into every aspect of life these days. People just don't feel like they have to give an explanation. And then especially in dating, people just think that they can just stop talking to you. Like they just died. And I just don't understand the thought process. Like I've had a couple of instances where I could have ghosted somebody, but I didn't because I respected them and their feelings. And although I didn't see anything with them in the future, I was like, you know what? This was a nice person. We went on a nice date. I'm just going to say, really nice to get to know you. I'm not looking for anything. And that's the truth. You don't have to lie. Oh, anyway, can you tell it's still bothering me a year later?
I mean, I get it. It's those things. And the thing is, before it was ghosting, I had dated a coworker once and he was giving me, he seemed like a nice guy and everything else. And lo and behold, I found out later he was married.
Good. And
it's
that's what you want.
I didn't realize. I mean, so it's like you don't, but it was really, when I look back, it was really obvious because it was like on the weekend, he would say, we're going to get together and go out somewhere for dinner. And of course, something always came up.
Something always came up. His wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, so we had ghosting back then, even though it wasn't necessarily ghosting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I was talking to somebody earlier about the fact that how society has changed and the respect and the normalcy that we had with certain rules of how to act, certain decorum. We don't have that anymore.
No, it's quite the word stressful. I say it a lot. So it's probably not stressful. Probably concerning a little bit. I'm still single. I'm, in my mid-20s, and one day I do hope to have marriage and kids. That's just something that I want. And I'm like, am I ever gonna meet somebody that actually respects, my time, me as a human being? And I don't know. And it's not just me being dramatic and thinking and feeling those things. It's happening to all of my friends at the moment. And it's just a bit weird. We just don't know what's next because this can only go on for so long. And I don't know. It's really interesting. And then even having people listen to the song and message me about it afterwards and be like, oh my goodness, this is happening to me right now, or this happened to me recently. What is going on? I don't know. I think we need to start a support group or something for people being ghosted.
Well, and see, for me, so last time I really dated was 2004. Because I married my husband. He's been dead 4 years now. I have not gone back into the dating pool because I'm like,
yeah,
we have the apps, we have the ghosting on the phone. I'm like, is it worth it? Is it really worth it?
No, I can tell you honestly, it's too much. I'm not on the apps. I don't do any of that. I'm just hoping that I'll meet someone naturally and organically. Wish me luck. Hopefully we catch up again in a year and I have a better story for you.
I hope so. Now, I will say there was a guest. The episode never aired on this podcast because there were sound issues and I wasn't going to air it anyway. The first thing he says to me, he was an older gentleman. The first thing he says to me is, "You have lovely skin."
Oh.
And I'm just thinking, it's kind, but in the same token, this is the first thing you're saying to me when you see me, and all I can think is, this is tad creepy, just a tad creepy, because it reminds me of Silence of the Lambs or something. It's just.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah, it's just a little creepy. But I can understand why it never got aired.
He didn't say it on camera. No, later on camera, he's talking about let's go get some absinthe in New Orleans. And I'm just like,
No, thank you.
no. So yeah, it's just like even here you get some kind. Sometimes you're just like, mm-mm, thanks,
Mm,
but mm-mm.
mm-mm.
So maybe
No,
I
thanks.
ghosted him because I was just like, ah, we're not airing this. So
Nah, I don't think you did. You're
so
fine.
so what is your next single that you're going to release?
I have actually a song called Call It coming out pretty much just as this drops. And it's about, the lyrics are I just a big sigh because the lyrics are very specific. And it's just, it's about knowing that something can't be anything more than what it was, and calling it for what it was, which was just a really lovely time together for like a really small little period of a holiday in Tennessee, and just calling it and accepting that it was that and not trying to make it anything else. So that's what the song's about. I've not had to explain that yet. So that's why I was like trying to figure out trying to figure out how to word that without absolutely uh giving all my secrets away. But I really love this song, and it kind of just fell out of me after my trip to Nashville last year, and I felt like it was a nice song to put out because it really um it's like a 4 minute long song. It's not for radio. It's not to be the next number one hit, it's just to invite people into my life. And also I know there's so many people that have little holiday flings and meet people that they might think could be something else, but it's not meant for that. It's just meant to be something really beautiful and short lived, and accepting that it's that. So I think it's just like a nice little song that I can't wait to have out. And I'm a bit nervous if you can't tell that it's just like very specific to my life, but I think it'll be good. There's a music video for it as well, so
Nice.
I'm excited about that. Yeah.
But I mean, here's the thing, not every song, as you said, is going to go on the radio. Not every song is meant to go on the radio. And sometimes, especially for your fans, they want the deeper cut. They want the song that is more personal. They don't necessarily want the thing that's going to be top 40. They
Yeah, well,
want
they're
something
going to get
real.
it with this one. They're going to get the deep cut, the real inside my brain kind of one, which is where the nerves creep in. But I'm also like, you know what? I'm a songwriter and I exaggerate so many things for the song. It's always based on true experiences, but there's a little exaggeration in there. It's fine. Like we all do it. And this one is no different. So I'm really excited to have it out. I think it fits nicely in the world with Reader Room. It was produced by Luke Wooten as well. And it will lead into then my next single release, which will be coming out in early October.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
when you're talking about exaggeration, though, social media, that is all it is. Everybody
Yeah.
exaggerates their life. Nobody is living in turmoil. Everybody's got the glamorous life. It's like,
Yeah. Crazy, right? That we just kind of accept that as is, but it's just so unrealistic. And um, I mean, we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. I don't post when I'm having a bad day. I probably should. I just don't post. So anyone listening that goes like, why hasn't Chloe posted for a few days? Probably going through it, probably feeling emotions that I just can't be bothered dealing with on social media. But yeah, it's a very interesting time we're in. There's ghosting, there's social media highlight reels that just kind of show the good, never the bad. Um, yeah, and I don't know. It's kind of interesting to observe it all.
well, back to the conversation I had earlier, we were talking about the fact that people are kind of obsessed with death, and whether it be in books or murder podcast, or I mean, I have a friend who listens to murder podcast all the time. She listens to them
Same.
before bed. And granted, I'm guilty of
Crazy.
watching CSI reruns, crime, I watch that,
I
but
love
I
that.
don't, I'm not obsessed with, once I finish rewatching this, I'll be done. But yeah, there's an obsessed cult now kind of about death,
Yeah.
and not in a good way. It's like the murderer, and it's like, well, why are we continually perpetuating this? Are you giving people ideas? Are we desensitizing everybody?
Yeah, I used to be one of those people that listened to the true crime murder podcasts religiously all the time. And I started feeling very anxious all the time and very paranoid and on edge. And I could not understand why. Silly. I wonder why. And then I would tell my therapist about it. And she'd be like, what are you listening to? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, oh, I listen to this new podcast. It's so good. It's about this guy that killed all these people. And she'd be like, you got to stop. So she told me to stop and I stopped and I don't listen to them anymore. And my life is a lot more peaceful. That's for sure. I do watch the occasional true crime documentary. I do find it interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't, like I used to, every time I got in the car, I would put a true crime podcast on. Why? Put
Nothing
something
like
happy on.
Nothing like sunshine and rainbows with that.
Yeah. And then feeling anxious all day. Why would you put yourself in that mindset? But I can understand the appeal. It is interesting.
Yeah, it is.
But in small doses.
It is. I mean, it's interesting to see how their mind works and things of that nature. But it's a little frightening because, number one, you're creating that anxiety level in everybody because everybody's going to see somebody as being the potential killer.
Yeah.
And number two, you're now programming your mind to focus on this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, when I travel, sometimes I travel solo. And then because of all my history of listening to true crime, everything is heightened. And I should never have listened to all that because everything that runs through my brain when I'm traveling and if I am alone, you don't want to be living up there. There's a lot going on.
Oh, I can imagine. Like, you know, you're looking at somebody, oh, he looks shady. Is
yeah.
he? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, and the thing is, it's bleeding into fiction as well because there's a lot of books that are coming out that are based more with darker tones to it. And people are okay with that.
I mean, also you could almost say with songs as well. There's that Lainey Wilson and Hardy song, Wait in the Truck, which is about, have you heard that song?
Mm-mm.
It's about the Hardy character, like the male character, finds the Lainey Wilson female character on the side of the road. And she's been beaten and he doesn't even have to ask and he knows it's a domestic violence situation and then he goes and kills the guy.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I think that would have gone number one and it's a great song, fantastic song. But yeah, it's a violent song. So I suppose that kind of death, murder is seeping into songs as well.
But it's kind of funny because, and I mean, over here we've been called out on it several times that violence is very much in our culture, but yet sexuality, no, we can't talk about that. Which that's more natural, but over here, no. Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that.
We've gotten called out many a times in the United States about that, especially because of gun culture.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I don't know. I can't.
It's kind of funny because I know the history of Australia where you guys are originally from. So it's kind of amusing that you guys don't have that reputation like we do. But yet, allegedly, you were formed on a penal colony. No offense.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, you look at this and it's like, well, what about us now? We are just a little bit outlandish over here at times. But anyway, we're not going to go there. So as far as the next group of songs you're releasing, are you putting on a different EP again, or are you going to put out a whole record?
So this year's songs are just singles and they will just stay as singles. But next year I will be releasing the EP that I've just recorded with Luke in Nashville. And I don't know when that will be out. It's just so fresh, but it will be out next year and there'll be 4 or 5 tracks. And we're very, very excited about it. I really love the songs we've just recorded. I wrote them all by myself, I'm really proud of that because a lot of my songs lately have been co-written, which is kind of new for me because all my early stuff was just written by myself. But I've been leaning into the co-writing a lot more lately. But these new ones that are coming out next year are all by myself, which is something to be proud of because I just wrote them in this room that I'm sitting in and got my feelings out. And now they're fully fledged songs.
So now that we're talking about your room, you have 2 guitars and a keyboard. So I take it you play all of these things.
I do. Yeah. So that guitar there, it was $70 from my local music store. I bought it when I got home from Nashville last year because I was very inspired and I love the sound of a nylon string guitar and I didn't have one. And purchasing it actually made a world of difference. And I wrote all these different songs on it that I don't think I would have written on my normal steel string guitar. And then that guitar there is an electric and it's pink. And I haven't actually ever used it live, but I ride on it quite a bit. And then I have my keys behind me, which I'm actually fully trained on the piano. And I did all the grades and all the music theory and stuff, but I never actually perform with the piano, but I do write on the piano quite a bit. And it's a lot easier to have a keyboard. I have neighbors that probably don't want to hear a piano at 11 p.m. at night going through the wall that we share. So
I'm sure.
Yeah, I do play. And I play acoustic when I'm performing.
When did you learn how to play keyboard or piano?
My parents put me into lessons when I was 6. So I had a lesson once a week, every week from 6 to 17. And I did all 8 grades of piano exams and it's not as rigid anymore and regimented. I don't sit down and play scales like I used to have to do, but I find myself sometimes just wanting to play the piano for fun. And I'm very fortunate and very grateful that my parents put me into piano lessons. I think it's such an incredible instrument and you can do so much with it. And it's just beautiful as well. And the history of it, oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm a history buff. I'd never studied history, but I just think the history of the piano is really cool. And of course, with the guitar, with any instrument, and if you learn it and you get the opportunity to be able to play it, I think it's pretty cool.
Do you plan on touring anymore?
Touring?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to get my music out there. I'd love to tour. It's such an interesting topic at the moment because I'm looking at moving to Nashville. So touring might be put on hold a little bit while I try and figure out what I'm doing with my life. But I definitely can play shows acoustically by myself and I can do support acts like that. But I do love performing with my band. That's just something that I might not be able to facilitate while I'm in the midst of like visas and things like that, because there's a lot of money that goes into that, to be so frank. But I mean, anything that comes up, I'm going to say yes to. I'm in my yes era and I'm doing anything that comes my way and just taking life by the horns. Is that the saying?
Yes. grabbing the bull by the horns.
There we go. That's the saying. So yeah, hopefully some more things pop up and I can keep touring. All the support acts I've had this year, over the last 6 months, I've literally had like less than 2 weeks notice for those tours that I did. And they were like travel around Australia kind of tours. So who knows, maybe in 2 weeks' time, I'll have something that I don't even know about right now.
Possibly. I mean, that's one thing when you brought up the financial aspect of it, you being such the small artist with doing all the self-management, the financial aspect of touring and relocating, that all falls on you. And yes, that is time consuming. It's money. And as you said, visas, that's all that red tape to go through is a big portion for you.
Yeah. And I just think I think it's important to be candid about it as well, because, when I've started bringing up the conversation with my friends and my family and hoping to relocate if I can, some people go like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot that goes into it. And I'm probably going to be eating chicken noodle soup for like the next year and tuna and rice and not spending my money on anything else. If I do go ahead with the visa process, because it's not the cheapest thing, but I love America and Nashville, and I think I kind of owe it to my 15-year-old self to follow through with that dream and give it a real go if I can. So I'll do that. I'll give it a go.
So is your band based in Australia then?
Yeah, my band is here, and I actually went to school with my drummer, and then we reconnected a few years ago when I started playing live in a band capacity, and then we just kind of found the other players, and they're all local to my area, and I love them to bits. They're just really great, and I I feel very lucky to have them in my band because they're just great guys and incredible musicians. And we do actually have a couple of shows over the next few months just around our city. And yeah, it's really fun to play with them. So
Do you think any of them would relocate with you?
oh no, I wouldn't even ask them that. They'd be like, "What are you talking about, Chloe? We've got a life here." So, no, they're in like my drummer and my guitarist are in their own band called the Vultures, and then my bass player is a session guy and he's a producer and he has his own things going on. So, no, absolutely, I wouldn't even expect it of them, but I think they'd come visit for sure. They'd be like, "Show us Nashville."
And I'm sure you wouldn't have a problem finding a band in Nashville.
No, something tells me that I think I'd be okay with that. I think there would maybe be some musicians there.
Just maybe, just a slight chance, slight chance. So, what would be your dream gig to play?
Ooh, the Opry.
That's what I figured, but
Yeah, that's just like hands down. The Opry and the Ryman are huge, huge dreams. So one day, hopefully, we can catch up again, and I can tell you I'm making my debut. Yeah, just the thought of that is so cool. I've done the tour with my family of the Opry, and then I did the self-guided Ryman tour by myself last year. And when you're at the Opry, you can choose to walk in the circle, and I've not done that. I've not stepped in the circle. I'm like, no, I don't want to jinx myself. So we'll see.
As a singer, I can see why you wouldn't want to do that. Did you ever watch the show Nashville?
Yes, I did. I think that is to be expected of someone like me, probably an Australian that doesn't like. I don't know if Americans or people that lived in Nashville watch Nashville, but I mean, I definitely did, and I loved it. And okay, great. It's such a good show.
It is.
Was just, and then I rewatched it last year when I came home from my trip in June. And I think I sent myself into a depression because I finally like knew Nashville and I actually recognized a lot of the places as well. And I was like, wait, I went there and I did this and that and that and that. And then I was like, oh, and now I'm back home on the Gold Coast and I'm 9,000 miles away from here, but that's a real place. And I've got a taste of it now. So you kind of like get the bug and you want to keep going back. It's not good.
So did the show do Nashville justice?
Ooh, I feel I'm not qualified to answer that question, but I loved the show and it was cool to be able to, when I was in Nashville, be like, oh, like that's that and that's that. But I'm not qualified.
Fair enough.
I don't want to step on anyone's toes.
Fair enough. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to add?
I don't think so. I think we've had a really lovely chat and I'm just really grateful for your time and hopefully we can catch up again one day and maybe I'll have some exciting news to share. Maybe my EP will be out. Who knows?
Who knows? And I would love to have you back. That'd be great. So thank you. Hey, Donna from the Better Two podcast here. If you've listened to my show, you know that it always sounds great. That's thanks to the guys at Third Ear Audio Productions. Third Ear Audio helps podcasters, broadcasters, musicians, and business owners get their important messages out to their audience. Rich and the Third Ear Audio team are easy to work with. They're efficient and understand that your message is important to you. With quick turnaround and the true caring of your needs, Third Ear Audio is your go-to for any audio message. Reach out to Third Ear Audio at 312-388-5596. Rich and his team will deliver for you. That's 312-388-5596. Or you could email them at info@thirdearaudio.com or visit them on the web at www.thirdearaudio.com. Chloe, I think she's got a bright future. I wonder, we were talking a little bit about off air about moving to Nashville and hopefully that move goes well. And if not, if she decides to stay in Australia, that doesn't mean she can't go back to Nashville and perform and actually do touring over there. So I look forward to seeing where her journey is going to take her because, I mean, I can imagine, she's been doing this since she was 6, 7 years old, singing, and she discovered this is her passion. And to be 15 years old and to meet this producer And now to be working with this producer and have him do your EP, it's a full circle journey. And I've had my own full circle journeys. And when you hit that moment where it may have taken several years to get to, when you finally hit that moment where you're able to go full circle on something. For me, it was giving my book to somebody. When I wrote it, that was the only thing that mattered after I was finished, is I wanted to give it to this person so they could read it. And I got to achieve that. Do I know if they like it? No. And that's okay. But the whole fact is, I did what I set out to do. And I think a lot of that comes from us believing so wholeheartedly that we can do that. You know, when I look back, she was talking about trusting the process and things falling into place. So when I look back at my life, I've been very fortunate to have things fall into place. It doesn't mean I didn't work for it, but certain things fell in, you know, like winning the pizza, because we've talked about this on the air before, winning the pizza and then becoming a disc jockey. It wasn't something that was like, okay, I won the pizza here, and then next week I was on the radio. No, it took me going into the radio station and Todd showing me how to do things, how to program, how to pick songs. And yes, he sat there and said, oh, I don't feel like programming anymore. So here you go, you do it. And granted, that doesn't happen nowadays as far as programming. The station is pretty much programmed itself, you know, by the computer. It's all taken care of by whoever's programming the computer. But at the time, I had to put in that work to get to do what I needed to do to become a disc jockey. And I think that's when we kind of lose track on things. Yeah, she had that 15-year-old dream of being a country singer. But there's been a lot of work to get to where she is. You know, she's in her 20s now, and last year she played CMA Fest. That's quite a bit of time that she had to put in the work. She had to practice, she had to write songs, she had to build an image. So when you look at things, everything, whether it be a chair in your house, think about all the moving pieces that come in there. Your phone, think about all the pieces that are there. Not everything is simple. And I think we have learned so much that we look at the aftermath. Success happens, yay. We don't look at the work that is put into it. We don't look at what the creative has done to show you how to create that song. We don't see all the work that went into writing those lyrics and putting all the music together. We don't see what goes into making that television show. Sure, if we watch the documentary, sure, we can see that. Sure, the clips behind the scenes, yeah. But that 1 hour show, or maybe not even 1 hour, in some cases, it's 15 minutes. You're not seeing the months that went into it, or years. Because sometimes, especially like production for a movie or writing a book, it's going to take a lot longer than that. And so you have to really appreciate all the work that goes into it. And while I brought up the murder podcast, I understand it's a thing that everybody's listening to. I get that. But I also have to step back sometimes and ask, how does it affect your life? And I mean, Chloe was talking about the fact that it was raising anxiety for her. And I don't think anybody thinks about that. You know, why is my heart racing? Well, but I drank a pot of coffee. I don't drink coffee, but you know, there's a lot of times, and this goes back to looking past just the instant part. You know, there's a lot of times that if we actually sat down and really looked at the bigger picture, we would see why maybe we're anxious. We would see why we're worried. And fear is a big thing, especially with your success. You know, the artist that creates things, we get fearful. What if you don't like it? And you have to say it's okay. So don't get caught up in the anxiety of fear, because that's the one thing about that podcast that we're talking about. If you're watching that constantly and you're desensitizing yourself, and then you start to see the boogeyman in every place you look, because this guy was a normal guy and all of a sudden he went psycho. You're never going to look at people the same way. You're never going to trust them enough. And you're going to start worrying, is this next guy or this next woman that pulls up next to me in a car, is she going to go off the rails? So if you're feeling anxious and you're listening to this, think about that for a second and see what happens. There's certain games I can't play on my phone because it makes me anxious, but I realize that and I stop. So how did I get off on this diatribe? It's because we were talking about the murder podcast. And like I said, I watch CSI. Granted, it's reruns, but I still watch it. And I know if I need to, I can stop at any time. So be a little bit more aware of what you're consuming at times. And if it feels like it's not right for you, whether it be food or whatever, do yourself a favor and take care of you. So on that note, I'd like to thank Chloe for being on the podcast. I'd like to thank Rich Zai from Third Year Audio for doing the audio as well, and Fast Susie for the music. And most importantly, I'd like to thank you for tuning into the podcast. You're listening. Well, that's part of the reason why I do it. Not to mention I get to talk to some really cool people. But on that note, I wish you, whenever you're listening to it, whether it be morning, noon, evening, night, the weekend, whenever, I appreciate you and thank you for tuning in. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye.